Welcome, welcome. Thank you. Sorry for the little glitches there. My name is Kate Ashby. I teach early childhood education at Shasta College. My co-presenter is Jeannie Veach, also early childhood education at Shasta College. And we are here today to tell you a little bit about a program we've been working on called Competency-Based Education. And in early 2021, Shasta College was approved to participate in a community college chancellor's office pilot program to establish competency-based education pathways in California community colleges. And at Shasta College, early childhood education was chosen as the first program to explore how to convert to a competency-based education framework and delivery system. So what we're going to do today, they look like a lot, but we are going to get to all of this. In the first part, we'll lay out what competency-based education is, what it takes to translate curriculum and content into this new modality. And then in the second part, we're going to talk about how this process naturally led to a reimagining of our students, our program, and the way that we teach our content. So I want to start by just really getting clear. What are we talking about when we talk about competency-based ed? So in the pilot project we are part of through the Chancellor's Office, we basically took an oath, in 2021 to these 5 guiding principles, and I'm going to read them for you. So first principle in CBE is that students advance upon mastery, not seat time. So time no longer equals learning. We've broken that link. Students develop competencies, including specific measurable outcomes. There's that word. It will come up a lot in this presentation. So we're really relying on what the students can demonstrate in terms of what they know and can do. In CBE, assessment has to be a meaningful, positive experience for the student. So we'll show you what that looks like just a little bit. We'll give you a little teaser. I'll show you a final assessment and how we use that in CBE. But going into this was something that we really wrapped our arms around and worked on for a long time. Another principle of CBE is that students receive timely differentiated support based on their individual needs. And this is true in both models that I'll show you in a minute, but this is specifically true in the direct assessment model that we use. The last principle, learning experiences emphasize creation and application of knowledge and the development of essential skills and dispositions. And I didn't even include it in this presentation, but dispositions, when it comes to being a teacher, is a huge area for us and one that we are beginning to go down now. It's making sure that we're really covering those dispositions of being an effective teacher. Any questions about this before I move on? Jeannie will help us with the chats.
Yeah, no questions yet.
No questions yet. Perfect. Okay. So there are actually, in addition to those principles I just talked about, there are 2 ways to deliver competency-based education in higher ed. So in the credit-based model, and you may be familiar with Western Governors University, they use the credit-based approach, where students progress through the curriculum, completing every assignment in sequence, leading up to mastery. It's very much like what we think of as a traditional course. It's just self-paced. So no pressure when it comes to time deadlines. However, the Chancellor's Office Collaborative required something called the direct assessment approach. And that's an approach in which students only complete what they need to reach mastery on the competency. It's a way to honor prior learning and experience, which saves the students a lot of time and money. Any questions or clarifications on the difference between these?
No questions yet.
Okay, great. So essentially it means that our program, because we use direct assessment, has to include student self-assessment, right, on the competencies. We have to know what they can do before they begin to work on the competencies. And it also requires us to have a very individualized approach. So this is a little bit different than just converting your content to a self-paced model. Okay, so the first thing they tell you when you start to do competency-based education is that you have to deconstruct and reconstruct your curriculum, your content, your delivery methods. And we didn't really know what that meant at the time, but we decided to focus on our program learning outcomes. We believed that the first step we had to do was really go back to the beginning, or back to the end, if you will, and look at our program outcomes. And what we noticed right away is that our program outcomes in our traditional courses were not well aligned both to professional standards. NAEYC is our national association that sets those professional standards, or the California standards, which have really been keeping pace with national standards. So what the first thing we did was we created 6 new program learning outcomes that better aligned to those national and state standards. And that was step number 1. The next thing we turned our attention to was, where do those program outcomes show up in our curriculum? At what point are we asking students to just know a little bit, to practice applying it, or to master it? And there's 2 rows on here I want you to see. The first row where it says module 1, PP, this one up here, you can see that we've divided these and color coded them. The top row are our new program learning outcomes aligned to the state and the nation. And then we divided those into, are we introducing these outcomes, reinforcing them, or mastering them? At what point are we expecting students to master? And if you look at this first line, most every X is in the green or the yellow. We're not really expecting anyone in our first course to be able to master some of these program learning outcomes. However, by the last course, ECE 8, that's our practicum course, you can see that all of these PLOs need to be mastered. There's many ways to do this, but what Jeannie's done, and I'll let her talk about this, is introduce a capstone assessment for the final course. And at this capstone assessment, called the Student Teacher Showcase, students have to demonstrate with artifacts to an authentic community how they have mastered these program learning outcomes. So we invite students, mentor, teachers, faculty, both part-time, full-time, employers, and people tend to bring their families to this event as well. And it's we host it on campus in person. It rotates back and forth between our main campus in Reading and our center in Tehama, where we also teach these courses. And it's just a way for students to really physically demonstrate what they've mastered. Now, other programs are doing this on campus. This has kind of gone a little bit viral on our campus. And so every program, usually in the process of program review, is starting to build this kind of curriculum map, where they're really looking at where their PLOs are talked about, where they're introduced, where they're reinforced, and where in their program they're expected to be mastered. Now, I will say that even in early childhood, we have very few prerequisites, and going into Common Course numbering, we're not allowed to have any. So it doesn't mean that students take all of these classes in order, that we have a really organized cohort. We do not. However, we've carefully structured this so that if students come into a curriculum class and they haven't taken a beginning class, we counsel them individually or we try to bring them up to speed. So other programs are doing PLO assessments. One of the ideas is to have a really quick quiz when the student petitions to graduate. It's not required. They can skip through it if they want, but maybe each PLO has one multiple choice question. That's one way to just do a quick check to see how well your students are doing on program outcomes. Another way is to do portfolios rather than have an event like the showcase in early childhood. They may have some document that synthesizes everything they've done in the program and is evaluated by one or more full-time faculty as appropriate to really demonstrate whether or not they've mastered those program outcomes. Any questions on this before we move on?
Nope, there was one question in chat, but it got answered.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. All right. So this is what we call the big scary grid. Once we outlined our program outcomes in our curriculum map, we turned our attention to the individual courses we were converting from traditional to competency-based. And this is just one grid for one course. We did 8 courses, and we are super lucky. We had so many people around California, really talented professionals in early childhood who have worked for decades to align all of our courses, all of our core courses in early childhood. So we got to build on a lot of really good work that had already been done. What we did was we took over on the left the course outline, the course description from the course outline of record, and those course outlines of record are all aligned around the state. So if you take EC 17 Principles and Practices at Saddleback or Cuesta or anywhere, almost anywhere in the state, you will get the same course description, the same course objectives, and the same open education resources. So we're way ahead of the pack in many respects. What we did was we took that course description over on the left and we split it into 3 competencies. We were also lucky that all of these course outlines of record that have been aligned around the state contained 3 student learning outcome statements. So we took those statements and we ran with them. This is how that happened initially. So long before we got to that, we split all of them. We split those course outline, that course description into different competencies and turned them into I can statements. So you'll see more of that in just a second. I want to draw your attention to our introduction and practice assessments. Again, in our CBE program, these are optional. Students do not have to do them and they do not carry a grade. However, we do provide feedback to them right away if they choose to do them. And they are all aligned to that outcome assessment they're going to do, which we call a competency. Any questions on this? Have I missed anything, Jeannie?
Nope, so far so good.
Excellent. Okay, so we, as I mentioned, started with our student learning outcome statements in our course outline of record, and we turned it into a competency. It's, you can see, a fairly simple process if you're happy with those SLO statements. So we were lucky. We had already a lot of work had been done crafting these statements, not just at Shasta College, but around the state. If in your program you wanted to take this on, you would want to look first, as I mentioned, at your program learning outcomes and then at your student learning outcomes for each course you are transferring to a competency-based model. You can see this is fairly simple. This is not rocket science. As long as you are happy with those statements as they are. So this is fast forward 4 years. This is from that competency statement to a performance assessment. It's one thing to have an SLO, a student learning outcome statement. It's another thing to translate that into something students do to demonstrate what they know. So this is an example of one of our competency statements. It takes that SLO and turns it into a performance-based assessment. And I'm going to show you a little more about this in just a second. This, I have to say, I'm just going to do a plug for AI. I really enjoyed listening to Tamara Tate talk about ways to help students engage with AI. We as faculty, it was really helpful. I can't overemphasize how helpful it is. We use ChatGPT. I can put an SLO statement in. I can say, help me create a performance-based assessment for an introductory level college student in early childhood education. And sometimes I get stuff I can work with, and sometimes I have to keep prompting, or I get the beginnings of something. It really is a thinking partner. That's how I treat it. I would never take anything wholesale straight out of ChatGPT because I need it to align to our curriculum. I need it to align to our philosophy and what we expect to get from students. It's not always perfect for sure, but it gives me some ideas I can work with. And that's been super, super helpful. It's just been a game changer. I'm one of those people that when I'm in a creative mode, I like to think out loud. And ChatGPT is a way to do that without boring the pants off of a colleague or worse, a family member. Okay, so this has been a game changer for us. Besides, ChatGPT is way more clever than I am, and it often has really good ideas. All right, so another thing that we do for our performance-based assessments is we use multiple modalities, lots of different ways for students to demonstrate their competence. We want them to feel comfortable with the assessment. We don't want them to have to learn how to do a graphic organizer on top of demonstrating what they know. So if a slideshow or even just a written essay is comfortable to them, that's what we want them to choose. And we work with them on that. If they want to take on a challenge and learn how to do a slideshow, they can do that, but they aren't required to do that to demonstrate knowledge of socialization and the interrelated systems that influence development. We want them to pick a modality that isn't going to be a huge learning curve, isn't going to challenge them more than the demonstrating the knowledge itself. And then once we had those performance assessments down, the last step is to work backwards, right? So we start from that PLO, we went from the PLO to the SLO, we went from the SLO to the performance assessment, what we call the competency. And then we went backwards from there to helping students or creating opportunities for them to practice the skills and knowledge they need to be able to demonstrate that competency. Any questions? So we're kind of at the end of our talk on competency-based ed. I want to move now into our talk on how it changed our program, but I don't want to move on until I know if everybody's with us and following us and doesn't have any really burning questions. I don't see anything in the chat. I see Yorick put the coach's website. And while we're waiting for people, I will just do a shout out to one of our coaches, Amanda Tainter. She's an early childhood education faculty at Reedley College, and she has been instrumental. One of the things that we decided early on was the sequence of courses and the content. And I mentioned that we had a lot of people around the state who have aligned a lot of content. One class in particular was left out of that alignment, And we felt it was really valuable to our CBE program. It has to do with classroom management strategies and understanding and guiding children's behavior. We just thought it was too important to leave out. So Amanda was hugely instrumental in getting a grant to pay one of our part-time faculty to write a free textbook on that topic. So it was the only textbook left that wasn't free in our pattern, and we really, really wanted to fill out the whole pattern. We really wanted that class in our CBE pathway. So it's taken a year and a half to get to here. We just finished the textbook. So thanks, and a shout out to Amanda for that. I want to respond to the question, how do you differentiate student learning outcomes compared to the competency? They seem identical. Yes, they are identical. And again, we are not differentiating. What we're saying is, if we expect students in our traditional program to demonstrate these outcomes, these are the outcomes for this sequence, this course, this part of this course, then why wouldn't we capitalize on all the work we've done on those student learning outcomes and turn those into competencies? So they really are the same. And I think maybe the answer to the question might come through in this second part, because once we did all of that, then the question was, oh, why aren't we doing that in our regular classes? And then the next question, when was all this done? When this was all done, did you have to get approved? Yes, we had to create, this is why it takes years. We had to create a whole new certificate program, because remember, we changed out one course in the sequence. And so whole new program, whole new curriculum committee approval, whole new chancellor's office, whole new accreditation, ACCJC, and so that our certificate students in CBE could qualify for financial aid, a whole new application to the Department of Ed. So yeah, there's a lot of other pieces to this. We are super lucky that we had a huge supportive administrators and leadership on our campus. Yeah, and I really agree with Yara. There are some who say that SLOs should have been called competencies, right? They should be demonstrations. Competency, yes, is something you have to see. It's not just a test. You can't just teach, test, and hope for the best, right? In competency-based ed, the student has to be able to demonstrate, has to be able to perform the durable skills, the content, the knowledge, etc. And the question, can you not see an assignment or a test? I could see an assignment or test. For example, we teach, one of the courses in the sequence for CBE is child growth and development. And there is so much content in that course, so much to remember, so much to know. We did debate whether or not to have one of those competency sets require an exam. We did ultimately back off from that thinking, but it is not out of the question that a competency might be an exam. So yeah, I mean, it can be a demonstration. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so Jeannie, you think we're ready to move on?
Yeah, I just want to add on, one of the things that we went through when we started this whole process was really wrapping our minds around, how do you take theory and put it to practice? How do you take these concepts and how do you see the learning? And it really is a constructivist approach of really seeing the students learning hands-on skills that they need to have when they leave our program. So a test can tell you that they know how to figure out what the theories are and how to apply them. But then later on in the competencies, we may say, here's an activity that you're going to do in the classroom using a specific theory to put it to practice, because some people are really good on paper, but they don't know how to transfer those skills into the classroom. And for early childhood, that was really important to us.
Yeah, and I will say that a lot of our practice assignments are little quizzes. We call them check your understanding, in both our traditional and our competency-based pathway. So we're really, we do have lots of steps and ways for students to test what they know on paper, in a test, in a quiz, in a practice assessment. There's lots of hands-on assessments, practice assessments, like observing a teacher for an hour, trying to link what she's doing in the classroom to that teacher's image of the child, their approach to learning, etc. So we really are focused a lot on hands-on and demonstrated learning. Now, if you teach English composition, that's a set of skills. There's no reason why you couldn't use some of the same final assessments that you already use as demonstrations of mastery.
Right. And we use videos where students record themselves in classrooms with children and then upload those videos with, what was the planning, what was the lesson plan, what was the focus, and then reflection, because in early childhood it's all about reflection. And so we take them through that cycle of observation where you plan, observe, watch, reflect, and then work with families or create
Again.
lesson plans. So
Mhm.
it's a big process that we use video for. But yeah, that's a good point, Kate.
That's unique to what we're teaching people how to do. Okay, so having been through all of that, we kind of had a light bulb moment. This is where this notion of the light bulb came on. Because if we're confident in the outcome assignments for competency-based, taking those student learning outcomes and turning them into competencies, why wouldn't we have all of our students use the same competency assessments to demonstrate their learning? So this was just it may seem really simple and obvious in retrospect, but at the moment it opened us up to thinking in a whole new way. So this is just a couple of four of the ways that it changed our program. The first thing is that those PLOs, those have to be standardized across our entire program. Our new PLOs are now aligned to our traditional, our certificates, our degrees, our transfer degree, all of the things we do are now aligned to the state and national standards. The other thing we did was really update those student learning outcomes. So if we had a student learning outcome statement that we struggled with, we fixed it. That was an important piece. And we worked with our part-time faculty, 6 a.m. meetings on Zoom. This was years ago. We also really, really worked super hard on those performance-based assessments. So why should a CBE student only have to perform those outcomes when we're literally using the same curriculum and the same content and the same outcomes? So this was just like, why aren't we doing this everywhere? It also really forced us to create practice activities to support student success. So for example, if I insist on a student doing a slideshow, this is the transparency framework, I need to go in and make sure that I have resources for them in case they've never done that before, right? That's part of the learning, part of the skills to be successful. So the big revelation for us, it's like we have multiple pathways now, but the same outcomes. And Yarek, please
Yeah,
talk to
I
us.
don't mean to be interrupting, Kate, but
Not at all.
I do wanted to go back for just a second, if you don't mind.
Yep.
The question about the alignment with standards, would you
Yes.
please elaborate just a little bit? You kind of like mentioned it, and I guess it just didn't register. But if you don't mind,
Yeah,
just
of
how you
course.
what was the process?
Yes, so it was one of the earlier slides, but the first thing we did when we took on competency-based education and started building the pathway is you have to deconstruct and reconstruct your entire program. And the first step in that was looking at our program learning outcomes. What we realized right away was that our stated program learning outcomes in our catalog were not aligned with the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, which authorizes child development permits for our students. And they were not aligned with our National Association for the Education of Young Children. They have 6 professional standards nationally. So we really wanted to make sure that our CBE program really spoke to those standards. That means our students can take our program learning outcomes and really go anywhere, not just in the California, not just in the US, but really around the world. Those national standards are universal in early
Wow.
childhood globally. So we were really trying to make sure that we started in a good place where we were aligned and our students could take that piece of paper and it was a passport to working with children anywhere.
Wow, that's just fantastic way to approach this. Absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
the horror stories. I mean, I heard from colleges and universities from throughout the country. What are we doing with those program learning outcomes? Where do they come from? What, you know, like, do we like lump all the SLOs together into groups? And, you know, you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
We need to take
We have wrestled with
responsibility.
this quite a bit.
Yep. Thank
And I
you.
mentioned earlier, I was the co-coordinator for the Student Learning Outcomes Committee on campus for 7 years. And as we were helping out with program review, the first thing every program review program said is we have no way of tracking our program learning outcomes. We have no data. We can't tell you how our program is doing. And that gave rise to a parallel track, as I mentioned earlier, where we're doing curriculum maps, we're looking at how we assess program outcomes, and ECE is just kind of out on the skinny branches now. But lots of other programs on our campus, as they go into program review, are learning lots of new ways to do this and how important this is. So, in ECE, early childhood education, we started seeing the potential for having multiple pathways for students with the same outcomes. So, our traditional courses are offered 8 weeks. We have 5 entry points per year. We have 15-week online classes with several local high schools in our district, same courses. We offer our courses online. We offer our courses face-to-face. We offer our courses video conference because we are a district the size of the Bay Area, literally. So we have students who cannot drive to our main campus. We don't expect them to. So we have incorporated these outcome statements, these competency assessments in all of these modalities. It has even become how students are assessed in credit for prior learning. So if a student comes into CBE and the very first thing they do is master the 3 competencies, they shouldn't be in CBE. They should be doing credit for prior learning. And we could get in trouble with financial aid if we don't say that. So students really get a lot of choices about how they move through our program, how they really can get the support they need. Some students have a lot of prior experience and they can go into CBE. We have a new credential in California, meaning we have multiple subject credentialed teachers, people with master's degrees coming back to California community colleges to get 24 units in early childhood. So they're choosing credit for prior learning, they're choosing competency-based ed, they're choosing our 8-week online classes, they're choosing video conference, they're choosing all sorts of modalities. And we really see this as an equity and access imperative, right? We're finding all sorts of ways. We're not saying now we won't do traditional because we have CBE. We're saying all of our students in all of our classes, regardless of the modality, are all performing on the same student learning outcomes. Any questions before I move on? Excellent. Okay, one of the ways that this has kind of morphed and grown and transformed our program is we created something called Faculty Fundamentals. Jeannie, go ahead.
Yes, so the question was if the student takes an assessment based on prior learning, but they don't perform at the level based on the assessment, what happens then? And in our credit for prior learning, they They have to have prior learning and experiences to pass those assessments, and they have to get a C or better to pass them. Otherwise, they fail and it goes on their transcript. So we really have that conversation. Our counselors do. We have a specific counselor that is talking to them about what is their experience, what is their knowledge. And I've had students apply to do credit for prior learning. They get in and look at the assessments, and then they decide, you know what? I want to take the class, or I want to go into competency-based education so I can get this updated material to kind of fulfill what I need professionally. So I think it's a conversation you have before you just put them in for credit prior learning.
Yeah. And hopefully, and if they do, Jeannie, correct me if I'm wrong, if they do go into credit for prior learning and they don't pass, they can go enroll in a traditional class.
Yes.
They can enroll in competency-based ed.
That is right.
Okay, so faculty fundamentals, super cool. This was Jeannie's baby, and I'll let her talk about it if she wants to, but faculty fundamentals is a monthly meeting, a video conference or in person. We do both for our part-time and full-time faculty to come together. What we really wanted to do was provide an organized, consistent template that faculty, particularly part-time faculty, can use, including like syllabus and of course, these student learning outcome assessments that we want to incorporate across our program. So we've done all sorts of things. We've gotten training in the design tools. We've created templates that faculty can use to create a homepage, create a color theme, create a really standardized, consistent look just to our ECE courses. We know that students, when they're taking a lot of courses, have a lot of bosses. And we know some of those are outside early childhood. That's natural. However, we wanted our ECE students to know that when they're in an early childhood class, it's going to look the same, feel the same, follow a similar format, have similar course policies like late policies. So we've come together and talked all that through and come to consensus, and we're all on the same page. And we think that that's, again, another equity access. We're reducing barriers to student success by streamlining, coordinating, and making our courses consistent for students. And then we got a grant from our president's office. We are a college very committed to innovation, and one of those ways the college demonstrates that is offering 18-month mini grants. And this is an 18-month mini grant. So our part-time faculty who attend, they can even go back and watch the Zoom recording and complete the assignments or complete the changes to their courses and submit those, and they will get a stipend for doing that. Any questions here?
Yeah, so I was talking a little bit with Denise around the attempts that you could do for credit for prior learning and also with CBE. So in credit for prior learning, they get one attempt, and then they, in CBE, they have 3 attempts for the assessment. But what's nice about CBE, and Kate will attest to this, is that they get one-on-one individualized support going over the assessment, letting them know real clear formative feedback on where they can improve. But it's different. So right now, I think Kate has 9 or 12 students going through level 1. Kate does level 1 of the competency-based education section. I do level 2. And so she individualizes with them. And it's very, it becomes almost very personable as a faculty, which we love. We love it when students ask questions. We love when we get to sit with them individually and help them be successful. And I think even Kate has said she wants to do that forever now. She just really loves it.
I absolutely love it. And I actually have some slides. Can you see the submit final assessment slide, Jeannie?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to actually go back to this one. I think we have enough time to kind of walk you through. I wasn't going to share these, but I had them ready to go in case this came up. What we do in CBE is we begin with a self-assessment. So we've taken the 3, we cluster them into 3-unit courses so that students can then get a traditional transcript. This was another one of the requirements of participating in this pilot project with the Chancellor's Office, is that students could take a competency transcript and translate it directly into a traditional transcript. So one of the ways that we kind of made that seamless was we took a 3-unit course, turned it into 3 competencies, but we clustered them together into one Canvas shell. And then the first thing a student does is complete a self-assessment based on the rubrics for those 3 competencies for that competency set or that 3-unit class. So students are already telling us what they know and can do when those are directly related to the rubrics for those assessments. The second thing they do after they complete that self-assessment is they meet with us, sometimes in person, usually over Zoom, and we spend a full hour with them going through their answers on the self-assessment and then also going through the rubrics for the 3 final assessments for that competency set. So we get to know them right away. We learn where they are, what they're strong in. And one of those part of that assessment is, how comfortable are you writing? How comfortable are you putting together a well-organized, well-formatted professional essay or PowerPoint or, that kind of presentation? And if they tell us they're not comfortable, that's where we start. We set them up with student services that can help them come up to speed on some of the technology, some of the skills they're going to need to be successful. Another thing we do is in that that first meeting is we engage with them with the content and those practice assessments, right? So initially I will say, oh, okay, so history of early childhood is something that's new to you. Here are some learning opportunities and some practice activities, some videos you can watch, some chapters in our OER you can read, and then some practice activities that you can apply these concepts to that will help you think through some of this material and come up to speed on the history. And it will also help them prepare for that competency. And then once they're ready, usually by the end of that meeting, I try to say, how long do you think you are going to need to submit that competency 1, 2, 3? They can start anywhere they want in the set. We don't tell them they have to start with 1. They can start in the middle, go backwards, forwards, or they can work on them all at the same time if they choose. But usually by the end of that meeting, they've got a deadline for at least 1 of those competency assessments. They have to score 80% or better. So it's not the standard 70%. You get to walk out with a C and be considered competent. You cannot. You have to score 80% or better, what we call mastery. 90% is mastery plus on every criterion on the rubric. So if you submit something that's factually accurate, but is full of mistakes, you're going to have to go back and attempt it again. And then you get 3 attempts. So far, nobody's gotten to the 3rd attempt and not mastered it, not gotten to competency and been able to move on. So we'll see if that's in our future. But we really, really work carefully with them. So when they submit an attempt on a final and they get near mastery on that 1 criterion, 2 criterion on the rubric, they get very specific feedback. Add this, take out that. Check your fact on this, whatever it might be, so that they know exactly what they need to do to fix that. Okay, I'm going to go back to here, faculty fundamentals, unless we have any other questions about what I just shared.
I think we're good.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay. So I told you about faculty fundamentals. This is how we are implementing this across the board effort to incorporate those 3 SLO performance assessments into every class that mirror our credit for prior learning and mirror our competency-based program. It's also led to, as I said, lots of other cool conversations and consensus building around consistency in our courses. So our next steps really are to use those outcomes features in Canvas. And I spent years as the SLO co-coordinator teaching faculty how to do this. So this is our next hill to climb, is to make sure that we're using the Canvas data portal to link to those outcome rubrics. And then every faculty is clicking mastered, mastery plus, not near mastery on all three of those student learning outcome assessments every semester or every course, so that we're collecting data, not just on the SLOs, but now we know how to translate that back to our program outcomes as well. And then we have our final teacher showcase that helps. So how did it turn out? We're actually really pleased with how it turned out. We built on top of what was already there, and we were lucky that there was a really strong foundation there that was shared among colleges. Jeannie?
There was a question to describe the scoring 80% and the application of a rubric.
Yes. So let's see. The rubrics have criteria, right? Just like you would in any formal assessment or summative assessment. And each criterion on the rubric can be mastery plus, mastery, or near mastery. If any item on that rubric is near mastery, the student needs to do another attempt. And then we tell them exactly what we need. Do people want to see a rubric? Is that what they're asking for, do you think?
I think the biggest thing is the scoring of 80%, because oftentimes in our classes, you have to get a C or better. But for CBE, we decided as a whole that we would raise that bar to be 80% or better. And I don't know if that helps, Kent, if that's what you're asking for, but
Are you guys now seeing my apps?
no.
Good. Okay, perfect. I could pull one up. Thinking I can do a new share. New share. One CB final assessment. Okay. What are you seeing now, Jeannie?
I see your course.
Good. Excellent. Okay. So I'm just going to go to preview rubric so you can see what it looks like. And this assessment, they're comparing historical, global, and contemporary approaches to early childhood education. It's really how they demonstrate their knowledge of history. And so they score one of these, and here is 80%. So 80%, 90% below 80% in near mastery. Now, at the end, it may come up, and then here's our outcome assessment that goes directly to our data portal. If it comes out that their total score is, it could say 80 points, right? If I did this, 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 these got, I don't know how they got reversed, and this, I would still be near mastery, right? Even though, see how I'm just barely below 80%. So there was only one criterion on the rubric that was weak or inaccurate that they need to fix, but it's going to show in their point score that they didn't get to mastery. Does that make sense? Now, if they did mastery plus all the way down, but one of them was near mastery, they may end up with a score 80% or higher. So as the instructor, I just have to know I cannot see anything in the near mastery column in order to pass that student or accept that competency.
Hey, can you go back to the question is what is the Canvas feature that you're using to link back to the SLOs? Is it automatically in Canvas?
No, so yeah, so can you still see my screen? And I'm
Yes.
pointing at my picture. Yeah. So as the SLO coordinator for campus, I have it's an admin account. And not every faculty needs to have access to this. The only reason I have access to it is to set it up in the data portal. So what that means is I can set up our outcomes in the data portal, and I can attach them to a course. So I would go into my Canvas course, go to the assessment, click on add an outcome, and I navigated off of that now, but I click on add an outcome, find an outcome, and it will take me to here. I don't need to have a data portal account or an admin account in order to find that assessment. And then I just add the rubric to my course. I just import it to my course, and then it shows up as an item at the bottom of my rubric. And I've been teaching people how to do this for years, so I can kind of do it in my sleep now. But that's our goal next, is to get all of the faculty, part-time faculty, to do that process. Click here, find the outcome, add it to your rubric. Click here, find the outcome, add it to your rubric. And you have to add it to your outcomes in Canvas, and those don't have to be visible to students. They're in your course menu on the left all the time. And you just have to be able to find them.
We've been really lucky to have Kate in our department teaching us all of this, because it's a big reach. But once you get the system, like she said, she's doing it in her sleep. But once you do 4 or 5 of them, it becomes much more manageable. And then kind of the process of everything when you set up a rubric, it's like, oh, we got to connect that to an outcome, or yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I was mentioning that, you know, we built on top of this infrastructure, which is a huge advantage for us. But, you know, once we kind of pulled back and saw the patterns, where the SLOs fit, where they connect to the program outcomes, it's hard to resist the challenge of really diving into your content, diving into your curriculum, particularly diving into your outcomes and how you assess them. That was just a process that now will never stop for us. We see our curriculum and our content in a whole new way. And I think it's made it really valuable for our students, for us to be that clear and that consistent on what we expect them to know and be able to do at the end of our program, regardless of how they do the learning, what model or modality they choose. If you're brave enough to deconstruct and reconstruct your curriculum, I can promise you it will be hard work. I can promise you it will take time. But that I can also promise you, if you don't give up, something better will emerge, something you're proud of, something you want to keep working on. And I see Jeannie
100%.
nodding her head as well. So as we wrap up, if you have ongoing questions about sort of how did we do this, you know, what is the nitty gritty, as someone in our community of practice called it, for WestEd around the state, we have a community of practice. She said, this all sounds great, but oh my gosh, I just know the administrative nitty gritty in California community colleges. And honestly, it's often the tail wagging the dog, I have to say. We have stuck true to our principles, but we've had to make some changes. Jeannie?
Stephen has a question. How much
Okay.
time are we talking about, start to finish, for a curriculum rebuild for a department?
Yeah, I would, Jeannie, you might have a different answer. For us, we started in 2021. We had release time, 1 class per semester, to devote to deconstructing and reconstructing, building the assessments, building our Canvas shells, launching our program. There were a lot of steps in there. As I mentioned, ACCJC, Department of Ed applications. We've already been through a quality review. So yes, it takes time. But if you give yourself 5 years to do it, you can do it. You just have to keep chipping away at what's in front of you in the moment.
And divide and conquer. We do it as a team.
We do. And we meet once a week for an hour with our key leaders, our administrative leaders, financial aid people. Our next hurdle campus-wide is how we're going to pay faculty going forward. We would like more programs to adopt this model, particularly general ed, so that our entire AS degree can be offered through competency-based. But we haven't answered the question, how are faculty getting paid? Because we're still getting paid through the grant. So that's another big administrative hurdle we're going to have to try to straddle.
And Angela said, is there a tool developed to guide in the Canvas integration for SLO? And we actually had Michelle Muldowney, who
Yes.
is part of Design Tools, and she was our what's the word for it? She was the one that helped us
She was our
design.
designer. She was our
Designer.
instructional designer.
Yeah.
Yeah. She helped us think through how to offer our CBE, how to design the shells in Canvas. When it comes to using outcomes in Canvas, there are some videos in Instructure you can look up on YouTube that will show you how to do it. I've developed several videos and taught several workshops on it. I'm happy if you send me, just send me an email, and I'm happy to send those videos. I've sent them to many other faculty in the past. Yay,
All
it is
right.
11:01. Our timing is okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Kay and Janie, for your wonderful presentation.
You, Enrique.
You're welcome. And it looks like they want our contact information. I can put that in the chat.
Yeah, would you? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of what we do now, honestly, is this. We help faculty think through these questions, learn how we did it. We're spending a lot of time on the road teaching other people what we did and how we did it.
Yeah, we call it the Dog and Pony Show.
Yeah. It's got a whole Pioneer Western theme.
Yeah, we'll be at League of Innovation if you're going to be there in March. We'll be in Indianapolis sharing our journey,
pioneering our pathway. We say that CBE, and part of the reason the Western theme is CBE is like what the railroad did to the covered wagon.
True story. Have a great day, everyone. Happy Friday.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.